Hello, everyone. Welcome back to HeirKare with Kathleen and Erik. We are estate planning attorneys who work out of Fowler Baker Shade, which is a law firm based in Johnson City, Tennessee. We provide estate planning and elder law services in the Johnson City region as well as Swanee, Georgia. As always, if you have any topics you'd like to see us cover, please go ahead and drop us a comment in the comment box below. We'd be happy to cover your topics. Today we are talking about the sandwich generation and caregiving concerns within the sandwich generation, which Erik and I both happen to be part of at this point in our lives. So most of you probably know what this means. It means that you are of an age where you are caring for both aging parents as well as your children. Sometimes it's minor children and sometimes it is young adult children. And so we are seeing, I think culturally, a much bigger squeeze on the sandwich generation, or that becoming a more significant issue for a couple reasons. The first one is life expectancy has generally increased over time, and so people are living longer. There's a lot of chronic health issues now as well, so we may have a longer lifespan, but not necessarily a longer health span. And so those pressures, along with the pressures of raising your children, and while my children are still in the house, from what I hear, young adult children still require significant time and resources to help launch them into their own more independent life. The sandwich generation is noted by having pretty significant emotional and financial burnout, trying to not only take care of yourself, but parents and then children as well. And of course, caregiving is a huge issue for sandwich generation individuals. So the first thing we're going to talk about is some of the emotional stressors related to the sandwich generation. And just to back up, we're lawyers, right? And so you might say, why are we talking about the sandwich generation issue? I should probably address that. And it's because we get a lot of questions coming in from our clients who are similarly situated to us about how we suggest they should address certain challenges that they are facing. And so we thought it would be helpful to give you guys some insight from an estate planning elder law perspective that might help guide you a little bit as you are making decisions that affect both parents and adult children. So with that in mind, Erik, why don't you take a second and tell us a little bit about some of the emotional stress that is involved with the sandwich generation and maybe some common issues that come up.
Yeah, so kind of the most common things are fatigue as a caregiver, just the overall, you've doubled the number of people you're responsible for. You're caring for your parents and you're caring for your children. And so it's really a big issue that I see people come in all the time who are just seem run down, tired, and then they're asking, and then inevitably they start asking about, now how do I make sure that if I pass away before my parents or something happens to me, how do I make sure I take care of my parents and my kids, right? And so that's just kind of a telltale sign that they're in that kind of portion of their life where they're having to do both, and it's just hard. Mm-hmm. Then a lot of times in that comes family conflict and stuff that's even adding extra stress to the whole situation. Siblings who live far away, and so you're the one taking care of the parents, but the siblings want to be a part of everything, and it just makes it very difficult. And then you also have dealing with an elderly person, or is not that different from dealing with a toddler a lot of the times, depending on how advanced their dementia is. Mm-hmm. I know my grandmother fights tooth and nail over having to take a shower every single time my dad needs her to bathe, and they've gotten down to only like once or twice a week, but it's just a big, huge fight. Mm-hmm. And so there's conflict there too. So it can be difficult. And then obviously balancing, work-life balance is tough enough when you've got kids who have activities, and then you add into that appointments for an aging parent and trying to get them to all the doctor, get them to the lawyer's office to do their estate planning. All of those appointments start to add up, and it becomes very, very difficult to do all of that. Kathleen, I know you've walked some of this with parents in your family and stuff as well. So Any extra insights to that?
I think there's some very significant cultural times that, or let's say, decisions that have really significant cultural impact for us as Americans. Things we don't like the idea of restricting or taking things away from people, right? Because we're very, very independent, individual oriented. We are a nation of car drivers, right? And I found one of the biggest fights in my family was over whether or not we should allow my mom to keep driving. And not everyone in the family agreed. And there were some significant, heated debates on the topic about what the correct decision was. And I know from my mom's perspective, and I have heard this from many, many people, and I would feel the exact same way. When you're growing up, at least in my generation and older, I would say, I hear the younger kids are different these days, but turning 16 and getting keys was freedom. Having the keys to the car, you could go do what you wanted to do. And when you try and take away someone's keys, you take away their right to drive. When we predominantly live in places that are not walking friendly, not bike friendly, it is incredibly isolating. It is taking away their freedom. That's how it feels. That's how it sits with them. And that, to an American, is a huge, huge freaking deal, right? And people will throw down over it. And I've seen it my own self. And just the other day, I had a client ask me about it. Hey, what should I do? And sometimes they think because you're a lawyer, you can say, oh, we'll do A, B, and C. And I just looked at them and I said, this is one of the hardest conversations you're probably going to have. Because of the weight that it carries with it. And there's no easy way. There's nothing that's going to make it better. Sometimes the doctor will step in and say, hey, you can't do this anymore. And then, hey, at least it's not you, the kid, taking the keys away. But some doctors are willing to do that. Some doctors want to hedge a little bit and say, well, right now we don't think you should be doing this because they don't want to be the bad guy. Or they don't have time to do the whole driving type consult and do all the extra work on their end. So sometimes kids end up taking away the keys and just hiding them, or the car doesn't get left at the assisted living facility anymore. So there's different ways that people manage that, and a lot of times how that's done is a relational question. I had one client who took the keys away, didn't leave the car at the assisted living facility, and then they found out that their parent had been driving other people's cars. The client's decision was, hey, we're going to have to make sure their license is revoked and that they know that, so that it protects people, right? Protects the loved one, protects the other people out on the road. So I found myself in these conversations with clients many times, found myself in this position with my family. It was not a one-time conversation, but just know it is a conversation worth having. It is a really important thing, and obviously it's not to be done lightly, but the emotional stress, the time in making those decisions is really huge. And I think, in addition to just the stressors, there's challenges, particularly when someone's not driving. They can't take themselves to their own appointments. You're often managing a lot of different schedules at once. You've got your kids' schedules, you've got your parents' schedules, you've got your own schedules, your spouse's schedule. I have, and again, just using myself as an example because I can talk about myself however I want to. I have my calendar for work. I have my family calendar. I have a restricted view of my husband's calendar because he's also an attorney, so I can just see if he has appointments. Yeah,
attorney-client privilege, it's important.
And it's got his travel schedule on there, which is pretty intense. And then when my mom was alive and we were addressing the brain tumor situation, I created a family calendar that her siblings had access to, my siblings had access to, and people could go on there, and if they were coming, they could put on the calendar. It was available to her friends, so they could see when she was supposed to be home. But it was a lot of calendar management, a lot.
Well, and I think another key point is even if they are still driving and can get themselves to the appointment, it's not uncommon for elderly parents to still want their kids there. Even if you're meeting them there, you've still got to coordinate with that calendar to make sure that you can be at the appointments that they want you to be at. Because as they walk through that stuff, a lot of times they start losing confidence in their own ability to make decisions or to understand what the doctor is saying to them.
Mm-hmm.
I know for me, I just got back from visiting my family and helping my parents as my dad's recovering from a pretty major surgery. And the biggest thing I noticed was that just my dad was not the same confident person he was because he'd had this health care thing come up. Mm-hmm. And it had just kind of shaken his confidence in his ability to make decisions. And so he was more often asking for input on things that he normally would just kind of look at and to make a decision. He was kind of wanting to know, should I do it this way or that way, and those kinds of things. And that's just, as parents age, that just becomes more and more of a thing. They begin to lose confidence in their ability to understand things, especially if they're in early stages of dementia. Mm-hmm. They kind of know, hey, I can do most things, but sometimes I get confused.
Yep.
And so I want you there, right?
Well, and just to provide the counter to that, that's best case scenario when they want you there,
right.
Particularly when you have parents who don't live super close by with mild cognitive decline, early dementia, early Alzheimer's. They can be very, very good at hiding their decreased capacity. And they will play things off, and it is very, very common, honestly, even for parents who live nearby, if you're not living with them and seeing them on a very regular basis. It can take a while before the kids catch on, and sometimes then the adult kids, feel really guilty. Oh my gosh, how did I not know they were living this way? These bills weren't paid,
right.
etc. And one of the things I just want to say now, because I say it to my clients all the time, it is not your fault, right? It is not your fault. It is tricky and hard to figure out when this dementia stuff starts happening. And it takes a while, and it takes some missed things for you to really understand, because everybody forgets stuff sometimes. Everybody misses a piece of mail sometimes. Like, nobody's perfect. But to get to the point to where you actually notice and understand, hey, they're missing their medication, or hey, their personality's changed. And it wasn't a short-term thing, but personality has changed. Sometimes they have a procedure or a surgery, and the anesthesia just knocks them down a level, and they never get back up to that cognitive level they were at before. So there's a lot of things that go into this, and I just want to say to you guys watching this that I would encourage you to not beat yourself up over this, because I've seen a lot of my clients beat themselves up over this.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think that's also a good segue into the fact that you may not notice it until it's too late to do anything about it is a good reason to early on start talking with them about, hey, do you have your planning done? Mm-hmm. Have you gotten your power of attorney stuff set up so that when the time comes, I can help you? Because occasionally we do have people come in where I have to pull the family out into the hallway and say, hey, we can't do anything. Yeah. We can't. They don't understand enough of what we're talking about for me to be comfortable preparing documents for them to sign. We need to go get a conservatorship. Mm-hmm. A lot of that comes from they just didn't notice how bad things were getting until it was too late. And all of that can be avoided by just early on, before anybody's even having before you notice anything. Just say, hey, I want to make sure you've got your planning done. If they don't want to share the details of it with you, that's totally fine. But at least saying, hey, do you have a will? Do you have a power of attorney? I don't need to know who it is. I just need to know that you have one, mm-hmm. right? Yep. That kind of stuff. It's really, really important to have those conversations early and often to make sure that they are checking on things and that their documents line up with what they want at the current time.
And I'm going to add on to that, if they don't want to share it with you, it's better for them to have it and you not know than to not have it. But if they are willing to share it with you, particularly in a situation if there is cognitive decline or dementia, in some situations it would be appropriate for you to hang on to those originals, because we have had clients lose stuff, throw stuff away, become concerned that their family members who are trying to help them are out to get them, and can become very combative, because again, the brain is changing and personalities change, and somebody who you never thought would not trust you is treating you like the scammer on the phone that's trying to steal your money.
Yeah.
Which is a whole other issue.
That's a whole other thing, yeah. But I mean, I just had a client yesterday that in the signing, I handed them back their documents, and they literally just slid them across the table to their daughter and said, you keep these.
Yep. And that's okay, right? That's also...
Because I'm going to lose
them. Yes, 100%. So we want documents, and we've got several videos on the different documents, what we generally recommend. So we're not going to rehash all of that now. But again, financial power of attorney, healthcare power of attorney, a will, advance directive, sometimes a HIPAA authorization as well. And again, sandwich generation, if you have adult children who you are their person that they would call if they had a medical emergency or something, we strongly suggest talking to your kids and going ahead and getting those powers of attorney in place for your adult children as well. Because if they're involved in an accident, God forbid, something happens, you don't just automatically have access to their medical records anymore or access to the bank account because you're the custodian or you're the parent, guardian. So it's important not only for your parents, but also for your kids and for you, because the easiest thing to do during these times is to neglect yourself. And it's a huge issue. There have been some studies that have come out over increase in chronic diseases in caregivers. And so taking care of yourself, while it can seem like a huge task and a very hard thing to do, is super important for your own health and well-being. So as sandwich generation individuals who have seen the situation with their parents unfolding, there's certain actions that we as the folks in the middle can do to help ourselves in the long run. So Erik, can you take a second to tell us about some of the planning and insurance options that we could take advantage of to help us in the future?
Yeah, so you've got kind of a couple different buckets you have to think about. First is going to be if you have multiple people dependent on your income, having some way to supplement that if you either become temporarily or permanently disabled, or if you pass away unexpectedly, having some income options for them is a step one. Making sure that you've covered in your own planning documents how education for your kids is, but where that bucket of money is going to come from, right? A piece that I think everyone's like, oh yeah, well I planned for college, right? I've got 529s, okay, but who's taking those over if you die? Who's going to manage that? Who's going to make sure that everybody knows that's where it is, right? That's what we see oftentimes when people come in where they're coming in saying so and so passed away, and I don't even know where the stuff is, right? I know they had stuff, but I don't know where to get it, right? And so having all of that stuff, kind of like we talked about with business succession planning, having continuity of the plan, that the people who are coming after you know where the stuff is, right? If there's a safe deposit box, where's the key, right? What's the combination to the safe? Those kinds of things.
Yep.
And then making sure that you've got support for a surviving spouse, right? So often, and especially in those early times, like if you pass unexpectedly and your spouse is now having to grieve and figure out how to care for parents and children, that's a lot to do all at once emotionally. And so having everything set up so that everybody just kind of knows, okay, the financial side of things can be on autopilot. It's done. It's handled. It's planned for. We've got it figured out. Can be super huge. Then you've got on the disability side, you've got insurance, long-term disability insurance. A lot of times through employer stuff, you often have short-term disability, although it's a good thing to check and make sure that you know exactly how that policy works, how long it covers for, what it covers for, because not everything is covered always. But then having a long-term plan that tacks on at the end of that as well. That's something that my family, my wife and I both have that. Hers more from when she was working before our kids got a little older and she started driving them all over the place. It's their personal chauffeur sometimes, but we both still carry it so that we have that income assurance if something were to happen to one or the other of us. And then just obviously emergency savings, the sort of the Dave Ramsey emergency fund, 3 to 6 months of expenses in the bank and easily accessible. I think at this point in our culture, it's become just like this sort of joke. Oh, well, I've got my Dave Ramsey money over here. But it's almost joked to the point where we don't take it seriously, right? And so it is a big deal having that there. It can make it so that your family just knows, hey, we can take a breather for a month and be okay, right? To kind of get things worked out. Those are kind of the main sort of things to be thinking about and planning for that. And then,
Well, one thing I'll add in here is particularly if you have a family history of Alzheimer's, ALS, Parkinson's, any of those neurodegenerative issues, I would suggest looking into long-term care insurance. There are a lot of financial instruments now that provide long-term care insurance. They are not necessarily the traditional plans that people are used to seeing where you pay money in and you either use it or you don't, and then it goes away. There's life insurance policies now with long-term care riders. They've got a lot of blending they've done of different financial instruments, and some of those do qualify for the tax benefit. It's something that I would suggest everybody consider. Obviously, if you have a certain family history, it would be maybe more important to you. But so disability insurance, life insurance, long-term care insurance.
Well, that's a good segue kind of into our next topic, which is get asked a lot while people are in the meeting planning their planning. They're going, okay, well, now let me ask you about my parents, and they're staring down rising healthcare costs and all of that. How does all of that work? Because that's kind of your niche area is how that stuff plays together and how we make sure that we funded elder care going forward.
For sure. So we have a video on long-term care planning, so I'm not going to go into the details of that, but things for sandwich generation individuals to be thinking about and looking for and to be aware of is understanding that long-term care is super expensive, depending on where you are. When I was up in Maryland, 16 years ago now, I think most places were $10,000 a month. In Johnson City, things are much more affordable. We are not at that average number yet down there, even 16 years later. In Georgia, it's not going to be as high as the DMV area, but again, higher than Johnson City. So it's expensive. And if, again, you have a family history, I would consider going ahead and thinking about long-term care planning, because if you do advanced planning, meaning you have no reasonable belief that you're going to need any services in at least 5 years, you have a lot of options as far as sheltering assets if you have assets to shelter. If you are in a situation maybe with a parent who needs care now, there's still options available. We just call that emergency planning. You don't have as many options available, but there is something that can be done. So I would suggest that if you are looking at trying to figure out how to pay for long-term care, that you go ahead and consult with an elder law attorney. Do not call and ask for an estate planning consult, because it's a very different consult. I do estate planning and I do elder law. I allot different amounts of time. Estate planning consults are complimentary. We charge for elder law consults because sometimes you just need a little guidance. Sometimes you need more in-depth planning, but you're going to get a much more in-depth look at resources. I explain how the process works and what the options are. And so tell people you need a long-term care, Medicaid planning consult. And even if you're not sure that you need it now, I would suggest that you should go ahead and do it now, because if you've already sold everything, spent everything down for your parents, and there's like no money left, right? Well, we can't help you save money you spent already. And I have had people come in and be in that situation. The other thing I want to let you know is every area's state agents are going to have different levels of sophistication and understanding of the process and the rules and the guidelines. I can tell you that I have had clients come in and they've said, oh, well, I talked to the area aging and disability agency and they said I could only have $2,000. And so we sold the house, we did all these things. And I just was like, you've already spent all the money and you got really, at best, incomplete information, and I can't help you now. So even if it's a state agency person, it's not that they're wrong necessarily, but they may not have a full understanding of the options available. They definitely don't really know the ins and outs of your financial situation. And
well,
so
that's not their job, right?
It's right.
Their job is to say, here's what the state law is. Their job is not to look out for your best interest. Their
Right.
job is not to help you plan this the right way.
Right.
So that's all you're going to get from them.
Yeah.
And
And
I know
incomplete
nursing
state
home
law.
staff.
Incomplete
Yes,
state
often.
law.
Yes. Well, and then I know nursing home staff sometimes will have the sort of, they've got this incentive to try to get you to stay on private pay as long as they can. And so the more they can get you to sell stuff and pay at the private pay rate as opposed to the Medicaid rate, the better they look. And so you can't really trust that they've got your best interest at heart either, that they're wanting to help get their job is to make sure the nursing home stays open and gets paid on things
Yes.
at as high a rate as possible.
Yeah, and some nursing
'cause
homes, business offices are great and amazing and super helpful, and some of them are understaffed and they don't know and they just don't have the background to really be able to help you.
Right. Yeah. So we've talked through about all the different planning you should do and things you should bring up to your parents. How do you actually have that conversation? What's that look like? Because that can be a little awkward. Hey, mom and dad, I think you have a lot of stuff that I would like to get one day. Let's talk about how to protect that.
Yes.
Right? That's an awkward conversation. I mean, obviously you're not going to go at it like that, but that's basically what you're asking.
Yeah.
And so it's just hard. So do you have any tips or ways you've seen clients do it well?
In my experience, medical families tend to be pretty good at this stuff because they're already used to talking about some of those harder things. And so usually if you're from a medical background or something, you can use that as an intro into estate planning, right? Maybe you saw something bad happen at work, so you can say, hey, this happened, it made me think of this, and maybe we should do some planning around this. If you're in the financial world, you can use your work experience again to segue into estate planning and getting those documents in order. A lot of this is relational and personal, and you know your parents better than we do, and so you'll have to maybe do some creative thinking if they're going to be really resistant. I know you can send them videos like this one, right? Say, hey, this came up on my feed and I think this is something we should talk about. Why don't you watch the video and let me know what you think, right? So you can use social media and things like that to also help break the ice on that conversation. Sometimes, again, going to the oldest child, sometimes the younger siblings call the older sibling and say, hey, we need to do this. What should we do? And then it suddenly becomes the oldest child's job to have those hard conversations. And maybe you've already been having those conversations most of your life. And so you feel pretty well positioned to do that. Sometimes that's not the case. You just need to look at the approach that you think your parent will hear the best. And understanding that sometimes they're going to be resistant, but sometimes maybe they'll surprise you. And maybe they just felt awkward about bringing it up. And I think going into the conversation calmly, going into the conversation understanding that, hey, we don't have to resolve everything right now. We don't have to figure it all out right now is good. And then if they have a knee-jerk bad reaction, particularly if you suspect any mild cognitive decline or dementia, understand that some of those personality changes are not about you and are not necessarily within their control, but it could be the result of the decline. If you cannot take that personally and not be reactive back, I think that can go a long way as well. It's not a fun conversation, but more often than not, you can have a profitable one.
Yeah.
What about you?
I know I had one time that was a little bit of a weird one that the parents called the kids to say, hey, we're working on our planning. Would you mind being, our power of attorney, this kind of stuff. And the kids' first words out of their mouth was, are you dying? Right? They were paranoid that because their parents were meeting with the lawyer that meant that they had this short-term prognosis.
Yeah.
So don't do that. don't tell them you think it's something bad's happening just because they're taking care of their planning.
Yeah.
Right? If they come to you and say we met with the lawyer, just say, okay, well, what did you decide?
Yeah. And along those lines, right, speaking of difficult conversations, maybe we're past the point where maybe we've already done our planning, but maybe we've had disease progression to where you're in a caregiving position, or maybe one of your parents is caregiving for the other one. People are getting really worn thin. Understand, please, that in many, many places there is respite care available, and intentionally having hard conversations maybe with the siblings, or maybe there's an aunt or uncle, somebody you can say, hey, we need help. And I know, again, for a lot of us, particularly the spouses who are in a caregiving position, they usually very often wait too long to ask for help. And they will allow themselves and or the loved one to actually be in a situation that is kind of dangerous for them. Again, not from anybody's bad actions, but just from a physical standpoint or a health standpoint, because they don't want to put them in a home or take some actions like that.
Or even on the ask for help side of things, I know for my kind of real quick synopsis of what's going on in my family right now is my grandmother's 99, lives with my parents. My dad had major surgery a couple weeks ago, and when we kind of found out exactly when that was going to be happening and all of that, my middle brother and I, who live on opposite coasts of the U.S., both within 24 hours called my mom and said, hey, we're coming, when do you need us? And she was just completely unprepared for the idea that we would even come help, right? It just hadn't occurred to her that her kids who, we live far away, but I mean, airplane tickets aren't that expensive, right? Considering the enormity of the situation that was going on, but she just didn't think of that as an option. She just thought, they're far away, I've got to figure out how to do this on my own. So it may not even be an intentional that she didn't want us there. It was just, she just didn't think about it. Right? Yeah. And so and I can tell you, we both came in on back-to-back weeks to help with things, and that took a huge load off for her, that she was able to actually take some time to make sure she was in a good place, so that once we had all come and done our week, she's in a spot where she's ready to step in, and she's not exhausted from everything else that's going on. And so that be willing to step in and say, hey, we're going to help.
Yep. And
you may be surprised that they actually would be willing to let you.
Yes.
They just need you to give them permission to need it.
For sure. So just to do a little recap here of some things for practical steps, things to think about, recap. So hey, confirm with your parents and for adult children that you've got up-to-date legal documents for estate planning, particularly those powers of attorney. Review beneficiary designations for yourself and talk to your parents about it. Make sure those are up to date. We've actually seen situations where people got divorced and forgot to update a beneficiary designation, and all kinds of unhappy litigation happened subsequent to that.
And not all states automatically revoke it on divorce.
Correct.
Some do, some don't. You need to check.
Yes. And just update it, and then it's not an issue anymore.
Yeah.
To the extent you've got it in you, get organized account information for yourself and for parents if they will let you do that. Discuss long-term care preferences. What are you trying to do? What can you guys afford? What can you not afford? Look at long-term care planning. Make sure you have your own documents. Make sure you're taking care of yourself. Make sure that you're properly insured for yourself. Make sure you're building that social network that will help you in emergency situations and caregiving situations as well. So I think that about wraps up everything I had on my list. Erik, was there anything you wanted to add?
No, I think we've hit a lot of stuff.
Yes.
Already.
So if this is you in the sandwich generation, we understand. We are right there with you, and just keep your chin up and taking things one day at a time. Thank you guys for joining us today. Please remember that everything in here is not legal advice, to the extent today that it was legal related. It was just information, and we hope you found this helpful. Have a good day.